Okay, so we're going to be moving on from Star Wars Outlaws in a sense, but actually, John, there's an intriguing news topic that's cropped up as a result of Star Wars Outlaws coverage that I think you're really interested in discussing. So I'm just going to let you take it away.
Right. So, we were discussing this on social media as you do, and somebody noted that, it's disappointing that this did not ship on a normal game card. It's only a game key card.
Right.
And I agreed. I was like, wait, it's down to 20 gigs. It should fit. It's kind of a bummer. But then somebody that works, Rob Banton, who works as an audio architect on the Snowdrop engine at Ubisoft, commented in that they actually did consider shipping this game on an actual Switch 2 cartridge, but that, as he says, Snowdrop relies heavily on disk streaming for its open world environments. And we found the Switch 2 card simply didn't give the performance we needed at the quality target we were going for. I don't recall the cost of the cards ever entering the discussion, probably because it was moot. And I think this is important because this actually gives us some insight into a different side of things that maybe hasn't been considered. So yeah, obviously the cost of these cards, it's like over $20 or something I've heard, for the publisher. It's a lot. Similar to the 32 gig cards for Switch 1, I suppose. That definitely eats into which games will ship on a game card or not. But it also seems like the performance is, because we know that the internal Switch storage is around 2.1 gigabytes per second, which is actually very similar to the 2.4 on Xbox Series consoles, right? XD Express then can do 800 to 900 megabytes per second, I guess. So it's about a little less than half the speed of the internal storage, which kind of checks with our testing, right? Where SD Express shows loading times slower than the internal, but it's not that slow. But then Switch 2 game cards use the eMMC standard, which has a maximum transfer rate of 400 megabytes per second, which makes it less than a quarter of the speed of the internal Switch storage. That is a pretty dramatic difference. I think we can agree.
Yeah.
And depending on how you use loading, that could be a serious problem as well. And based on what he's saying here, it definitely seems like with the way that this game was built, it basically couldn't the game couldn't work well from the Switch 2 card, essentially, because it's not fast enough to support the game streaming that they need to do. But he also clarified that if we design a game for Switch 2 from the ground up, it may have been different. But this was indeed built around the SSDs of the current generation consoles as the target platform. So they expected like a minimum of that like 2 gigabytes per second range for actual access.
Mm-hmm.
And even still, the Switch 2 loads a bit slower. Like it's like, if you get like the 10 to 12 seconds for like a Xbox Series versus like 17, 18 or so for Switch 2, just loading the game, not even talking about the streaming. If you think about the speed of the game cards, yeah, that could be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting. So it's a bummer for people that want these games shipping on cards. But it also, for me, makes me think like one solution to this could be Nintendo essentially allowing developers to put games on cards that is like a data store, and then like the game key card, it downloads it, but it downloads it from the game card instead of from the internet. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that could be a way forward here. And
it's just having some flashbacks to the PlayStation 3 era where you had to,
I know,
had those
Blu-ray
mandatory installs, which isn't ideal, but I see where you're coming from. I think the thing is, it wouldn't be every game that would be doing it.
No, right? Not all games need this, for sure. I think it's just specific. It's going to be like we were just talking about games being ported from current gen to Switch 2, being viable. And it seems like this is indeed one of the bottlenecks right there, where you need the fast storage in some cases for it to perform optimally.
Right.
Interesting. Thoughts, Alex?
Well, I mean, it does make a lot of sense. I would be curious to throw this game on a standard SATA SSD to see what happens. There's no reason to do that these days. I'm pretty sure everyone is rocking an NVMe, and if you're
I
not,
wouldn't be so sure about that, Alex. It's still a great cheap option to have a SATA SSD, and the bandwidth is kind of like max 500 megabytes per second. So it is kind of in that ballpark. It would be actually really interesting to find a game on PC that doesn't perform on a SATA SSD to the same degree as NVMe, or where there's a strict dividing point where it works on NVMe, but not so much on SATA, because I don't think we've actually seen that before. So that would be quite interesting.
Yeah, like the only thing we got slightly close to it, I guess, was like Ratchet, but not really. It was just like the portals were a little slower. That was really about it. Like it wasn't even a big impact on the game itself. I think this makes a lot of sense. I'm very curious to see what other games could fall into this category of requiring hefty streaming all the time to make their open worlds work. I think we've tested out some UE5 titles, and they were well within the realm of like normal SATA SSDs. So, yeah.
So, interestingly, this parlays into another related sort of topic. So it was reported this week that on Video Games Chronicle, they talked about how 75% of sales for Cyberpunk on Switch 2 were physical. And famously, they put the full game on the card, including the DLC, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But obviously, Cyberpunk is a game. On PC, it has a hard drive mode, and also it was designed to work on older consoles with mechanical hard drives. Not physical, but mechanical hard drives. And we know the game can take advantage of SSDs, but it also can support slower storage. So that's a case where they still made it work, but it also makes me wonder, like, if some of the changes made to that version of the game were in pursuit of overcoming storage speed. I don't know.
That's an interesting one, actually, John, because you've now got my physical copy of Cyberpunk, and we do actually have CD Projekt Red streaming tests. Internal streaming tests.
Yes, that's
so
true.
we could actually run those tests. You just need to use my profile or my save games.
The thing is it's less about the tests and more about changes made to the game itself, right? Where, like, to make this work, they chose to do X, Y, and Z, and it's not so much you'll see a difference between the two, just that it doesn't do this because they had to make sure it could support the slower storage.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see it.
I mean, 75% of sales on physical media, though, that is bucking the trend, bucking and certainly disrupting the narrative about how everybody is moving over to digital sales. And it kind of enhances the concept that physical media is actually very, very important to a console like the Switch 2 in specifically, right? I mean, that number I thought was kind of shocking. I thought it would be more like 50-50. But 75% of people, actually finding, I guess maybe ordering online because there's not really so much of a physical presence for physical media, certainly in the UK. I don't know what it's like over in Germany and the US. But
there's plenty of physical media on shelves here still.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Well, what can I say? It's certainly puts into perspective the survey that Nintendo did about the whether people actually want those key cards or not.
Mostly not, but sometimes I guess they seem to be necessary in some cases. But the reason why the Switch cards are so good, though, and why people want them, at least beyond ownership, it's like, it sucks having to have everything installed when you have limited amount of storage.
Yeah.
The Switch's internal storage is not large enough, in my opinion, and you fill it up very, very quickly. Game cards, when it's actually on the card, allows you to take a game off your shelf, pop it into the Switch. There's no install, even though we were just talking about optional installs, but currently there's no install. You just pop the game in, play. And I think that maintains the essence of classic console gaming in a way that no other platform has for over a decade, and why people are still holding on to this, because it is, that part of it is a big part of the appeal of Switch 2.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that one, Alex?
Not really. I mean, Switch 2 physical media in general. I only really indulge in old PC game boxes these days or DVD casings. So I don't have really any good opinion on this one.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I think it's interesting to see the narrative kind of disrupted in this way, and it's kind of just goes to show how important it is, likely for this specific platform. And it's also important simply because what can I say? You don't get a huge amount of storage within the system itself, and you can expand it, but obviously, when you are expanding it, it costs a lot of money. Those micro SD Express cards are not cheap. That's certainly
they are not
in favor of the physical media argument. Interesting data, though, nonetheless, because it's one of the spec points which wasn't leaked prior to launch, and it's certainly important because it's, you know, now we have an explanation for why certain games just can't appear on physical media unless there is some sort of provision for an install of some description.